Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to open up the hearing for the emergency response plan. And at this point, I will defer to Mr. Tim Seymour, our superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. So just the format for this hearing. I'll review the components of our emergency response plan. This is the district plan, and there are, as referenced, 2 building level plans that are in executive content under the action item later in the agenda for the board's perusal. Those are the far more detailed plans. The district plan, which we'll be discussing publicly, encompasses the aspects in which we comply with the SAVE Act. So the SAVE Act, if you look at the introduction of the document, SAVE Act stands for the Safe Schools Against Violence in Education Law, and it puts forth very specific criteria of how school districts on an annual basis ensure that their security is being evaluated by law enforcement, by internal groups, etc. So I'll review those components. There'll be an opportunity for board members to ask any questions or make any comments. There'll be an opportunity for public comment and questions, and then we'll close the hearing. So on that note, if you reference the table of contents itself, you get a generalized idea of the components of the plan. So the first section really just speaks about the manner in which we plan on an annual basis, talks about how we form our school teams. The second section references all of the risk reduction and prevention strategies that we use as a district. Some of those I'll reference specifically, as I think they're certainly timely. So if you look on page 5 of the document, since the district has in place the following prevention strategies, assemblies to discuss pertinent issues, the first one. The most common manifestation of that takes place with our ALICE training with staff that we do on an annual basis. That's usually conducted in late October. This year, we're actually conducting our ALICE training with staff next Friday, so being a little earlier than usual. That protocol talks about how staff members can respond to different concerning situations backed up by ALICE protocol. The next bullet point there and how we look at risk reduction has to do with interventions by teachers, counselors, psychologists, teaching assistants, and administrators. And that really is the work of our mental health team, which meets on a weekly basis. And then our district mental health team meets on a monthly basis, spanning all 3 months. Group discussions led by psychologists, counselors, and teachers is the next bullet point. That references specifically our threat assessment team and our threat assessment protocol that we have. We have a pretty robust flow chart that gives some guidance to the team that allows us to evaluate if there is a perceived threat, if it's a transient threat, or if it is something that needs to be addressed more robustly, either internally in the school or with our mental health partners at the county level or our law enforcement partners at the village or state police level. And then there's some character education programs that are referenced. We continue to use the PBIS program at the elementary school. Last year, we did include the Lake Placid Connections for Change program, but our current program at the middle high school is P2. Actually, the board approved the formation of a club pertaining to P2. It's called the PIA, or Positivity in Action Club. That was at our last meeting. So that's beneficial. And then we also leverage advisory groups through the evaluation of this plan. So over the last year, I would say we probably have done our most thorough partnering with different advisory groups to review our security at large across the district. So just as a sort of a look back, in January and February of last year, the district passed the Workplace Violence Prevention Program. There's a requirement under federal law, and with that plan, we were required to create 2 building level committees. Those committees would walk through both facilities and identify any potential hazards that staff members have in the conducting of their job in different spaces, and then to make recommendations on ways to alleviate any of those potential threats. So that was certainly beneficial. And then in May of 2024, we did a deep dive with multiple partners, specifically on our facilities and our security in our buildings. So we called in CISA, which is the Department of Homeland Security and Cybersecurity. Brian, you probably know the acronym better than I do. But Homeland Security, essentially. We partnered with CISA, with the Lake Placid Village Police Department. So Chuck Dobson led the overall effort for us, and we also had representation from the Lake Placid Fire Department. And they conducted a security risk assessment of the district. And the charge that we have really for them is in evaluating our facilities, how can we allow our systems that we have, which are very robust, how can we make continued upgrades to allow these systems to speak to one another so we can be more responsive to potential threats. And as a result of that effort, we submitted a $500,000 grant. The SPPP that we did, Dana, or was it the COPS? The COPS grant. And we're awaiting, word on potential upgrades and funding for that grant. The announcement deadline of awards is September 30th, but we've been told that it could be as late as November or December. So those are some of the actions that we've done to date to review security writ large across the district. And then we also have a partnership out of Jefferson Lewis BOCES. And this is the health, safety, and transportation cooperative service that they offer. And they review all the legislation across the state and federal governments, and they identify any areas specifically in our plans that need to be amended. So in our district level plans, there was nominal changes from the year before. Basically, it was the inclusion of some additional titles into some specific trainings like bus drivers, for example. At the building level plans, those plans had additional inclusions that had to be there. The most popular one had to do with ensuring that if there's a lockdown drill conducted in any district in New York State, that it is announced as a drill prior to it being conducted. Apparently, there were districts across the state that were quite zealous in promoting that sense of reality of a threatening situation and not informing students and staff of those things. And people were rightly scared. Yeah. So that's never been a practice in our district. We've always announced that a drill is a drill. And the lack of that language indicates a very real concern or threat. So that was one of the big changes that happened at the building level. Also, when schools conduct their mandated lockdown drills, they now have to notify parents in advance so that there are not any perceptions or concerns that a drill is something more concerning. So those are the big changes at the state level that were put forth by our health, safety, and transportation COSER team. So just one of the other aspects of this that I'll reference, and then I can discuss a few other things in the plan. So New York State requires a bevy of documents to be certified to the Commissioner of Education over the course of the school year. Our safety plan, by regulation, is supposed to be board approved by September 1st of each year. And then we have 30 days to report the passage of that plan to the Commissioner of Education. So this is my 8th year as superintendent, and I have colleagues who've done this for quite a while. And Dana and Karen can attest, meeting that deadline is not representative of how a school functions. So this year we've had to think about things a little bit differently. So we will be taking the winter and spring of this year coming up, 24-25, to reevaluate the plan so that we have it ready for 30-day notice for September 1st approval with our existing staff before they retreat for the summer. So that makes sense. So at one of these years, in order to become compliant with the regulation, we had to flip how we do this. So this just happens to be that year. So we'll be convening our district team December, January, and February so that we comply with the yearly requirement to review our plan with our in-house team. And then once we're on that rotation, we should be in good shape. So it's just one of the odd things, but every year I have to indicate to the Commissioner of Education what steps we will make to comply with the reporting recommendation. So the steps that we're making this year are to flip the way we do this essentially.
And isn't this the earliest we've actually had this?
This is the earliest we've ever been able to do it in the district. Yeah.
Getting it.
We're getting there. We're close. So back to the district plan itself. The next section talks about response. It identifies the different hazards, and threats that the district has a plan to respond to. And essentially, our district plan identifies that whenever we have something that needs to be responded to, that the building plan is first activated, and then the district acts as incident command of that situation until a law enforcement presence takes over. So the building plans, as you'll see, are more thorough for those reasons, and they discuss things like exiting the building, reunification, specific roles of staff members, and those plans are updated over the course of the summer with the building principals. And then there's various appendices that are there for reference as well. Just identifying our incident command system model. The last bullet point, the emergency remote instruction plan, was something that was required as of last year and is a holdover from COVID. But if you were to look at this plan and the plan the previous year, you would see nominal changes, primarily having to do with people involved in specific titles or including certain roles that were already in certain trainings. So that's the district plan. Are there any questions or comments from the board that I can help to?
You still have to have the pandemic stuff in there. Is that required by state still?
It
or
is.
that what the state?
Yep, and so in the reporting that takes place, we have to, one, indicate whether or not we met the deadline, two, indicate the steps if we didn't, what we're going to do next time, and then provide the link on our website so that it's publicized. And the last step is certifying that there are provisions in the event of another pandemic for remote instruction. So that's the new norm, I guess.
New norm.
Any other questions? Comments? Okay, then we'll move to the public comment section. Grace, are you here just as a listener? Okay, do we have any letters?
Notation.
All right, so we do not have any public comment or submitted statements or questions. So with that, I'll move to close the hearing.
I would like to officially close the hearing for the emergency response plan and ask that we now move into our regular meeting. Call to order, please. Would everyone please stand for the pledge of allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to the consent agenda, the recommended action. Approve the items below which are included in the consent agenda. 5A minutes, 7A board goals and objectives, approval for the 24-25 school year. 7B recertification of lead for lead evaluators. 7C emergency response plan approval. 7D tax correction, and 7E special education. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Any discussion or? Would everyone please vote? That's 6 yes. Moving on to, for the good of the cause, public may address the board. Karen, do we have anything? We do not. There is nothing noted in the information for the public. So we will move on to our reports, with the first being the treasurer's report. Dana?
So you'll have the last 3 months, June, July, and August. We're playing catch up here. Summer. No real surprises here. If you've taken the chance to take a look at all 3 of them, they're pretty straightforward. We have very little, last month, very little revenue coming in, more expenses going out. That's the nature of our typical school year, where we have very little revenue being generated over the summer, and we're gearing up for into the new school year. So if you look at, let's look at August, operating funds are always remain low in comparison. We keep as little in operating funds. We move money as needed. And that generally starts with, you'll see there, insured cash sweep has a little over $600,000. That's kind of like our holding spot for right now, because the majority of our excess cash we put into the night classes. So we moved all that last year because it's got a higher rate of return than the other places. So that's where you see that kind of that flow. Most of our cash is in the night class system, and then as needed, we move it out of there into the insured cash sweep, and then we move it into the operating account to pay our bills. And that role is reverse as we bring in revenue. Comes into our operating account first, and then we do this time of year. We'll do probably a weekly transfer of funds out of our operating account into our cash sweep. So far since September 1st, we've moved $3 million already into the cash sweep. This is our time of the year where we generate 85% of our revenue through tax collection. So they're coming in past the periods. We're probably depositing on a daily basis anywhere from $300,000 to $400,000. But you'll see Treasury report, really pretty straightforward. We always have, seems like lately, larger outstanding checks. That's just because of always our timing. When we produce a check run, when they get mailed out, and then how long it takes our vendors to deposit those checks. So that is, questions on the Treasury report? Reports.
Next one is also Dana, the budget performance report.
It's very similar this time of year. Our expenses are pretty nominal, and that's why we don't typically do a July and August budget performance report, just because we have very little expenses. Most of our staff is not working. We really just have our 12-month working. Give you an example. During the summer months, an average payroll for us would be anywhere from 70 to 100,000. Once we have our 10-month staff, that jumps up to nearly 400,000. So summer months, our expenses are pretty low. So you can see there in terms of year to date, this is as September 11th. No major surprises here. Our salaries at the time, this was produced, was slightly lower than last year. I can tell you that's all about timing. Our first paycheck for the 10-monthers was September 13th. So that was just a matter of time. I waited until yesterday to run this report. This year's salary line would be higher than last year's salary line. And that's our contract increases. We're averaging a little over 4%. So it makes sense that our salary expenses are going to be 4% higher over last year. Otherwise, there's no real, major red flags here. It's kind of really too early for that. We're on track. The one notice that kind of outstanding is last year for debt service, we only had about a $15,000 payment for debt, and this year it's about $132,000, and that's attributed to our buses. 3 buses this year. We always need to make that payment up front, so that came out July 1 for our 3 buses. That's why it's higher than last year. So. For the revenue side, again, what you'll see is it appears that we've collected all of our taxes for property tax, which isn't really the case, but what we do is we book it as a receivable once September 1st comes, because we know that money is coming in. We're getting, taxpayers have until, basically November 1st to pay us directly, and then after that, everything gets sent to the county, and the county then re-levies the taxes on those that don't pay it. But in the end, the county always makes school districts whole from April. So that's why we do it this way, because we know that money will be coming in. So that's why it appears that we've already collected $17.7 billion. But in reality, it's just a receivable. It's not actual at this point in time. And then everything else is nominal because of the time of the year. As I said before, 85% of our revenue is property tax. By November, we'll have all but probably $500,000–600,000 outstanding for property tax. And state aid will start coming in from there. Questions on the revenue side? Yes.
Up next is superintendent.
So on Thursday of last week, we had our open house at Middle High School. Recall that our elementary open house was the day before school began, which was also great. So our middle high school open house was a huge success. One of the things that Ms. Lindsay and Mr. Clark have done for the last 2 years running is they've gamified our open house. So all of our staff members are given a series of tickets, and whenever you visit a teacher on open house, then you get a ticket. And towards the conclusion of the evening, students can put their tickets in different mason jars for prizes. So all told, the prizes were pretty legitimate this year. The grand prize was a bicycle. So there was a lot of fanfare for that, but there was people were ready to throw down on a $10 Starbucks card. So like it got real. So whatever they're doing in Seattle, I guess it's working. But anyways, it was fantastic. So that tradition started last year in part because students were attending, but they weren't visiting all their teachers, and so we wanted to find a way to do it. So this was a wonderful way to do it. This year we kicked it up a notch, and so out front of the middle high school by the Oval, members of the senior class all ran different game stations, and they too had tickets to get to kids, and they had to take on a senior and beat them at a game. So I, of course, humbled myself to these, upstanding students, just one after the next. So I lost at cup stacking really bad. I didn't realize that was a thing, but it was awful. Cornhole, Aiden Fay was so good that I just kind of walked away. I didn't bother doing it. There was a pretty heated game of one-on-one basketball. Trivia was a good one. I learned that the national animal of Scotland is the unicorn. So thank you, Google, for that bit of knowledge. And then I feel like such an old timer, but like I never had played Foursquare before. So I played Foursquare. I know. I like what planet am I? I have
What is Foursquare?
Yeah. So if you're unfamiliar, it's a box. You stand in the box, bounce a ball into the square, and if you have any degree of coordination, you remain in the game. And if you're me, then you exit the game promptly. So it was excellent, super fun. There were community groups in the foyer, Rotary, the EdUp Fund, the Village Police, UCI mountain bike staff in preparation for the big event at Mount Tahoe, and Order were all there with families. This is the second year we provided dinner for families. So last year we patronized Main Street Pizza. This year we rotated businesses and supported Mr. Mike's. We went through 52 large pizzas. So that gives you an idea that either Kobayashi was here or we had a lot of people here, which is great. The whole event was just excellent. So I really just applaud all the hard work from Ms. Lindsay, Mr. Clark, senior class, all of our volunteers. It was fun. And we had to kick people out at the end. So that tells you everything you need to know. Super fun. Coming up, we have our first staff development day of the year. It's a half day for next Friday. So I would just like to recognize how amazing our elementary after school program is. They provide childcare for over a third of the students in the elementary school, which is amazing. And at that day, they'll be dismissed at 11:30, and they'll travel to Hunter Dreams Farm in Plattsburgh for all of the Norman Rockwell activities: pumpkin picking, animal petting, taking a wagon ride, exploring a corn maze, just everything you do. So that's a partnership. A lot of the folks who provide the after school program also moonlight as district staff. So we free those folks up on those half days so they can support the kids. So it's a pretty good program that has been in existence for decades. The staff who will not be picking up will be working on two different things. So the first is, and I have links in here for you to just check out at your convenience if you like. The first is to learn how to make the data that we have on our students with Math and ELA, make it actionable for families and students. So we've done a really good job over the last year in getting data points on how our students are progressing in Math and ELA, but that data is so clunky and just voluminous that it doesn't have the impact that we want it to for families. Like, our goal should be that a kid in the class who says, I have nothing to do, any teacher can say, well, work on your progress monitoring so that you can improve. Or when families are about to open the report card and say, how can you improve in the subject? There's some very actionable things they can do. So this program is called Edmentum. It translates all of that data. It puts the student at a certain progress monitoring level, and then they can do lessons to advance and acquire badges, and they can track their progress. So we're going to be doing a whole bunch of things through the year to celebrate the students who accumulate those badges and just incentivize some of the learning outside of the classroom. But this also is a really nice program for staff to just within 2 clicks identify which student got a particular lesson and which groups of students did. So it breaks them up into tiers, and it, when you meet a certain percentage of students who don't show mastery, there's a problem with the administration of the lesson, reteach the lesson. So I'm very excited to see that come to fruition this year. That's been something that we've pushed ever since the strategic plan came about. And the second is our ALICE program, which I referenced during the safety hearing. So we will review our ALICE protocols with staff on that half day as well. Our following superintendent's conference day, the next one is the day after Halloween, which was a masterstroke calendar planning. So the sugar rush that accompanies Halloween will not be borne by our staff on that day. So I expect thank you cards in the mail from our staff and a mail from parents to be directed, 50 Cummings Road if possible. But jokes aside, we will focus on the science of reading training on that day at the elementary school for our new Amplified curriculum. And then we started off the school year with our new Brisk AI learning tool for staff. And now our tech integrators are going to show our staff how they can use that tool specifically for students. So it'll be exciting to see how kids get to interface with some of those tools. So it's been the first week and a half or so of school, and I've had plenty of time to pop into classrooms and see kids and teachers get to know one another. And I wanted to share a few anecdotes. I think these tell the story of our school better than any report probably could. So the first one is I went into Mr. Fermante's 5th grade social studies class last week on Monday. Students in there had a blank map of the 50 states on their smartboard, and they were being tasked with going one at a time, and the name of a particular state would show up, and they had to point on the board where it was, and then it would activate. So Mr. Fermante said, well, stick around, Mr. Seymour, let's see how the kids do. So it was their first go around, and as a class, they achieved a 60% score of locating the states. So I thought that was pretty good. Mr. Fermante drives a pretty hard bargain, though. So he said, Mr. Seymour, why don't you, do you think they can handle doing better than that? I was like, you guys can get maybe 80% by the end of the week. And Mr. Fermante's like, we're only going to try for 100%. So don't even bother. All right. So I said, okay, let me know when they're ready. So sure enough, Friday came around, and I know it's always a good sign when I'm opening the door to the hallway where the classroom is located. And I hear whispers in the class, and then I hear, he's coming, he's coming. All right. So they had all set it up, and over 8 minutes, they, as a class, achieved 100% accuracy on label interstates. And midway through, one of the students was taking a lot of time trying to figure out where it was. And I was empathizing with that student. I turned to Mr. Monti and I said, should we have like a phone a friend option? So like, like the student doesn't feel like they're, up there kind of languishing. And he said, well, I always have a friend. So he's going to need to figure that out for himself. Mr. Seymour, you Safi, as polite as he could, if you know Mr. Monti. So the student worked through it, figured it out. And when the class achieved it, he said, now class, I want you to take into account that when you know that you're the only person that's going to get this done, you can achieve it. I just thought that was such a great anecdote for what our teachers are doing. Like I asked them at the start of the year to push the rigor and challenge our kids. So it's really refreshing to see that in action. So I applaud Mr. Tremonti and his geographically capable fifth grade. I want to give a staff shout out for perhaps what maybe some of the more mundane tasks of the district, but are absolutely crucial. So our two school nurses, Amanda Rodriguez, who has been here for several years, and Ashley Macy, who is in her first year in the district as the elementary school nurse. They have presided over everything but diphtheria over the course of the last 2 weeks. It's just been a revolving door. Flu, pneumonia, whooping cough, COVID is rearing its head everywhere. They soldier on. But I really want to give them a shout out because New York State requires that all students are vaccinated within 14 days of the first day of school. And if they are not, and if they're not in process with an appointment on the books, then I have to be the heavy and exclude kids from school. And every year it comes to tomorrow where I'm like, okay, where's my list? I'm about to make one of the worst phone calls I have to this year. And both nurses have just been on the ball despite all this, ensuring that our students are vaccinated. And my day tomorrow is going to be substantially easier because of that. So I applaud them and hope that their immune systems fight the good fight in the duration. And then a student shout out. This one I just love. So at our middle high school open house, there were some 8th graders who were looking at all the mason jars, analyzing the prizes, and they couldn't help but notice that one of our 4th grade students who came up with a sibling was just eyeing this bicycle. So they all got together, these 8th grade boys, and said, if any of us win, we should let this kid have the win. So they all put all the raffle tickets, they forego getting the Starbucks gift card, and they all put it in the one for the bicycle. And sure enough, Sammy Scott won. He was the big winner. And Sammy gave the bicycle to the student. And I got to see the kid brimming with pride with this bike down the hall. So, we got good kids. We have great staff. We have an awesome community. So it's the best part of my job.
Yeah.
That and reporting on the safety plan for September 1st. Those are the two. It's neck and neck. So that's my.
Good stuff. 5A, the minutes are consent. Personnel. Recommended action, approve the items below, which are included in the personnel consent agenda. Item 6B, volunteer coaching appointment, fall 2024. 6C, appointment of extracurricular activity coordinators for 24-25. 6D, teaching staff non-maternal parental leave request. May I have a motion, please? That colleague.
Yes.
Any discussion or? Please vote. Six yes.
All right, congratulations to Serena, and thank you for your service as a volunteer coach. Thanks to all of our extracurricular activity coordinators for the year, for all the work you do in advising our students. And congratulations on the way to the NEMICS for their impending bundle of joy.
Thank you. Moving on to action items, A through E are all under consent previously. So we will move on to our second good of the cause. Anything, Karen? No. So do I do our regular adjournment and then exec? So we will adjourn into our adjournment phase of our regular meeting. The next meeting date and location is October 1st, and everyone please note it is in Wilmington.
Someday, people.
Take a look, boss.
Someday. Do we have any old agenda topics? Just old agenda topics? Anyone? New agenda topics? Then recommended action is a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of discussing the lease of real property and matters that would imperil the public safety if disclosed. May I have a motion, please?
Thanks.
Who was the second? Was it Ron? Doug. Doug. Okay. Please vote. That's 6 yes.
That's all. It's exact. We'll do it. Review of that stuff. That should be a problem.